This is the Seahawks podcast, episode 460. I'm Brandon Schultz, and I am joined by my good buddy Adam Emmert as we have returned home. We're back from Dallas and back home to Montana. It feels good.
Yeah, we did it, buddy. Made it back from Dallas. Little mad at Dallas. Wasn't exactly warmer. Every day that I looked, the temperature was about the same during the day as it was back home. So not much of a reprieve there, but a fun trip, man. We did it. We did a good job. We got to Shrine Bowl, got to talk to some dudes. It was a good time.
We got one day of decent weather, or at least better weather than Montana weather. Because when we drove down to San Antonio, it was like 70 degrees, and that was different.
That was different. Yeah, that was different.
I don't know how it can be 70 in San Antonio, but like 40 in Dallas. That makes no sense to me. They're like right next to each other.
I don't know, man. I ain't Jim Cantori. I can't tell you.
Well, we got to have a few days at Shrine Bowl, and one of the biggest takeaways, Adam, that after spending 4, 5, 6 days over the period of the Shrine Bowl, I understand now why people go for like 2 or 3 days, and then the Senior Bowl is happening, so that also makes sense. But I can understand why staying for it is not, particularly staying for the game too, is not required.
Yeah, I'm with you. A couple days, it feels like you get everything that you can get out of watching dudes practice. And we're talking about practice. You do get the one-on-ones. You do get to kind of see some individual matchups that are fun. But at the end of the day, a guy's stock can only go up or down so much every other minute at practice.
Yes, and one of those guys, I think we'll get into his stock when we start talking about the players. We've got about 10 to 12 players that I want to go through, guys that we ended up interviewing while we were down at Shrine Bowl, other guys that we just felt like were standout players, and some guys that just were there and worth talking about. And that's what we're going to get in today. We're going to also get into just some of our takeaways too. We did our quick reaction show to the hiring of Klint Kubiak, and I figured we'd give a little updates if we've changed our feelings in any way. Because you and I, Adam, while we were down in Dallas, we did have a few minutes to go back and we watched a few Saints games just to kind of get a little bit better idea of what we might be getting into with Cubes.
Yeah, got a little taste of it. And as we said with the quick reaction show, it's a little hard to know exactly what you're getting in a lot of ways because his tenure has been so short as an offensive coordinator and all of his stops. But definitely some interesting conversations to still be had there. I know Clinton's really jacked up about going through a Saints Commanders game towards the end of the year where the Saints were playing with high school students and managed to keep it competitive. So that's going to be interesting. So look forward to doing that with him. I think we're going to record that tomorrow night. Don't know if we'll do it live, but that will be in your YouTube inbox / podcast inbox here shortly.
Yes. Well, we've got a lot coming up too, because we've got you're doing a Super Bowl preview with the PNW Prop Stars.
Yeah.
We're going to hear from Klint Kubiak probably sometime this week in a press conference form. So I suspect we'll be going on live and covering our reaction to that at some point too. So it could be a busy week leading up to the Super Bowl, Adam.
It could be. Absolutely. And as you said, we got to interview some of these dudes from Shrine Bowl as well. And I think we're going to sprinkle those out between here and the draft. So stay tuned for those, about 15 minutes a pop. As a whole, man, dudes were delightful. They really were.
That was a big takeaway, is every guy that we interviewed, it kind of made me want them on our football team. And
yeah,
even one of the first guys that we're going to get to that, maybe you wouldn't necessarily think, but if you are watching via YouTube, want to make sure you are subscribed, youtube.com/Seahawks podcast. Made it up over 5,000. We want to keep the momentum going. And a big thanks to everyone who helped us reach that mark.
Heck yeah, man.
All right. So yes, talking about one guy. This was the first guy that we had an opportunity to talk to at Shrine Bowl. Defensive tackle C.J. West from Indiana. And man, this is a guy I definitely want on the team. One, because I think in terms of guys who, they talk about stock going up, stock going down. This guy was kind of talked about as kind of a back end of the draft type player. And by the end of Shrine Bowl, I think a lot of people were thinking, "Oh yeah, this guy is definitely going, like a day 2 type guy, more likely, maybe early day 3." But just to give you a sense of some of these guys, like they have this opportunity to show who they are, go through the interview process, people talk to them, and come out the other end, and their stock really can increase just going through this process.
Yeah, I can because some guys are pigeonholed as certain types of players when they're asked to do certain things in their schemes back at college. And, a guy that played at Kent State there for 4 years, as you see on the graphic that Clinton put together for us, and then transferred to Indiana last year, but regarded more as just kind of a run stuffer without much upside as a pass rusher. And I think that's really where he showed that maybe that is a misconception for him because there in one-on-ones, he was able to beat dudes relatively consistently.
And it's tough when you watch these one-on-ones because it's well, it's not really for the strength of the offensive lineman. And the reason why I say that is because when they set up these one-on-one drills, they're all pass blocking type drills as they go one-on-one because usually the guy is going backwards on the offensive line, and it's just set up, I think, more for defensive linemen to probably have more success than the offensive line. That was just one of the random takeaways that I had from those
Mhm.
particular drills. But he was a guy too that when he was beating a guy on the offensive line, it was quick. It was like that.
It was quick. And it's interesting the way that you put that, the defensive lineman having the advantage in those one-on-ones. It's kind of the opposite of receivers versus corners in one-on-ones where the receiver has the option to break his route 1,000 different ways and you don't have any help in coverage and all that. Whereas in this particular case, the defensive lineman has all the advantages. He knows where he's going. And then usually for an interior guy like CJ West, he's going up against a center or a guard. And those guys, when they're playing in a game, it's not just them versus those interior guys. They've got their buddies to their left and the right, and that helps out a lot. So you're not able to pass things off in those one-on-ones. Not that you don't ever have one-on-ones as an interior defensive line. It happens a
Sure.
fair amount, but you know
But
what
for a
I'm
guy
getting
like
at here.
CJ, like we talked to him and he's a guy who's used to getting double teams. And so when
Yeah.
you go from being double teamed traditionally throughout the season, and then you go on to these one-on-one drills and you only have to beat a center or a guard type, and they rotated the centers slash guards through all three positions, whether it was left guard, right guard, center. And so you could have a guy who is used to playing left guard his entire college career, and they're being rotated then and having to snap the football and then block, or then being at right guard and totally, we one of the guys that we talked to coming up, Drew Kendall, talked about how you have to switch your feet, and it was
Mhm.
all um, just things to have to then keep in mind. Whereas for a defensive lineman, it's go forward.
Yeah, go forward, get that dirty quarterback, call it good. Delightful interview. I can see how his draft stock would rise with his interviews and that sort of thing. Just a very engaging human, somebody that's easy to root for. And man, this is a type of guy you get this guy second day and have him as a very solid rotational defensive lineman as a rookie. That gives you a lot of depth there in a quality prospect for sure.
Cam Miller, North Dakota State University, the one quarterback that we had an opportunity to interview at Shrine Bowl, and not on the bigger side of quarterbacks, obviously 6'1", 212 pounds. And uh, it's interesting, like just in terms of quarterback stature, like all throughout the week, you look at some of these guys throwing the football, and he definitely looked like one of the smaller dudes, but also, and well, okay. Yeah, I see you kind of shaking your head a little bit.
Yeah, just
Um,
kind of like, yeah, kind of maybe. I don't know. I basically when I was watching the quarterbacks, none of them none of them are like Josh Allen physically imposing or anything like that. They all
no,
look like dudes who look the part, and that's enough.
they were all 6'1" to 6'4" ish.
Yeah.
And maybe the other part that the role that played into this was, I thought arms in terms of arm strength, like Cam Miller was kind of on the lower end, and obviously played at an FCS school. So that might have played into him making it to North Dakota State versus being in one of the higher tier schools. But a guy who, when you watched in practice throughout the week, he was dropping it in over the top of guys. I think more frequently, his ability to what am I trying to look for in terms of accuracy?
Layering
Like,
it. Yeah.
yeah,
Is that kind of what you're
he could
getting at?
layer his throws a little bit more than I think some of the other guys. And I think one of the takeaways, though, I'm curious to see if you picked up on the same thing. When we were at the Shrine Bowl practices,
Mhm.
all these guys like could throw pretty hard. And
Yeah.
when all they have to do is just drop back, not face any pressure, like you could see guys put zip on the ball. And some guys were, stronger armed than others. But it was interesting watching them go from that when they didn't have anybody around them to then being in the practices and drills then when they were surrounded by pass rushers, and how much that would impact then things like their accuracy and their arm strength, because they all of a sudden they have dudes around them.
Well, this isn't aimed at Cam in any way. This is to the quarterbacks as a whole. When there were like some sort of quote unquote live bullets, and again, it's still practice, so
Right.
it's not even the real game. There was a lot of check down merchanting going on, like just check downs, check downs, check downs. I'm going to tell you straight up, man. In terms of watching the quarterbacks in practice, I got precisely jack and catfish out of that. I couldn't tell anything. Like to be able to say this guy had a little more arm strength than that guy and all that. Watching it live when they're all just throwing against air and not with a lot of coverage, tight windows, all that stuff. It's just hard to tell. And one of the things, my big takeaway as I've done the quarterbacks every year, is that I do have a specific process. It's very simple, but part of that process is, watching game tape. And I've not gone to a crap ton of live football, right? Like I'm
Right.
not used to watching it live. What I'm used to in my 30 odd some years of watching football is watching the TV copy and or now, the all 22 stuff. And I can tell way more from that than I can at practice. But one thing that I noticed in the practice with all the guys, in a little less with Cam, in definitely a lot more with Kyle McCord, man, when they're practicing fades and a lot of that stuff, any of the sideline stuff, and you talk about layering throws and feathering throws, the amount of times that the quarterback coach looked at the dude and was like, dude, up, and was pointing to the ceiling, up, get some air under, get it some
Right.
air under. All these guys wanted to throw frozen ropes everywhere. And it's like, that's nice and all, but that's not how you're going to be consistent with some of those throws in the league. I mean, one of the reasons Russell Wilson is who he is on the deep shot is the loft and the arc that he gets on the ball on some of that stuff. So that was an interesting takeaway. But Cam really shined in the game, I thought, in comparison to the other guys.
He did. Well, shoot, he was the only guy that put up points on the board. The first half, and Cam was the quarterback, ended up playing because McCord sat out. Shedeur Sanders was there. He didn't even practice, so he was just there to do the interviews. So Cam ended up playing, the only quarterback that scored points. And looking back at some of his stats too that are up on the screen, passing yards through his final year in college, 3,200 passing yards, completion percentage of 74%, 33 touchdown passes to just 4 interceptions, and then add on top of that 630 rushing yards and 12 rush TDs. He picked up a rushing TD during the game. So a guy who is versatile. He could throw the ball. He could protect the ball well. And I, in terms of being an NFL quarterback, like if we were just going to project where this guy probably gets drafted, I would say probably 5th through 7th type rounds. So probably not a guy that you're looking to be a starting quarterback, but a guy who I think that has like all those other tools that you could look at and say, "Yeah, this guy could play a little bit."
Yeah, I'm not ready to make an evaluation on any of that at this point until I can find some good cut ups of just every throw through a number of games for him instead of just watching some highlights, a little bit of kind of the helter skelter Shrine Bowl for the players. I mean, they put on a great event. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that the event's helter skelter, but like more just kind of playing with a bunch of dudes you don't know with a blase playbook and all that. I don't know what I take away from anybody's performance at the quarterback position throughout the week. And one of my biggest takeaways, I think, Brandon, is everybody that's telling you that this guy was amazing compared to that guy, and a bunch of stock ups, stock downs, and all that stuff based off of one or two practices when they may or may not be working on certain things. I wouldn't put it more than, I don't know, 2 ounces worth of stock into any of that.
Well, we will get to one of those players here in a little bit. We mentioned McCord, and I think that's probably where a lot of that conversation comes in because, yeah, I picked up on a little bit of that too. But
Yeah.
one other guy that we got to interview at Shrine was Drew Kendall, Boston College offensive lineman, and just a cool guy to talk to. One, because he is the son of Pete Kendall, who was drafted 21st overall way back in 1996. And Drew Kendall, we got to go Hawks from him, Adam.
We absolutely did. Even had mentioned he'd love to be a Seahawk and follow in his dad's footsteps as he did at BC. Played all 3 interior positions throughout the week. Acquitted himself well from what I can tell. And, is an interesting prospect and at the very least could be a rotational guy, I think. And somebody that has a lot of experience in obviously has been around the game his entire life. We got to chat with him quite a bit about a few different offensive line things. And I thought some of his insights were helpful.
Only 5 pressures allowed throughout this last season. And yeah, 3-year starter, 2024 captain. He was even one of the captains at the Shrine Bowl. He was their starting center to kick off the game. And it was just interesting talking to him too, because center not being a position that he played traditionally, he had to go out there and he had to pick it up. And he said that even leading up to the game, like he was coming off an injury, so he didn't even have like that much time to try and snap the football. And yet here he was leading off the game for the West and lining up at center.
Yeah, in true fantastic offensive lineman fashion, was just like, yeah, I don't know. They asked me to do something, then I just go do it because I'm not a diva. I'm an offensive lineman. And one of the things talking to both the offensive linemen that we chatted with that really shone through is, of all the position groups I'd like to hang out with and just sit around a campfire and drink beers, offensive linemen all day long without question, fantastic people.
Yeah, not divas, but also talking to Cam, he didn't come across as I would have expected a quarterback who I would lean more toward being on the diva-ish side. Cam wasn't like that at all either.
Oh, not at all. Despite being a national champion and playing well in that game, yeah, he was definitely in humble mode and trying to do his best to show that he could stand in front of a podium as the face of a franchise and not say a damn word, which is what they're trained to do. And not that he was being elusive or anything. I thought he was a great interview. But you could see the QB polish in comparison to maybe the rest of the interviews as well.
Yeah, I could see that a little bit. And when it came to Drew, and like he was really willing to go and because we had so many questions, where there are weird questions, off. He was willing to get into everything.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I wanted to do while we were there, man, I wanted to keep us in the fun lane a little bit. If you want to listen to somebody like break down X's and O's and some of the most fine details of each position, there's 1,000 podcasts for that. I wanted these guys to be able to show their personality a little bit, have a good time, and maybe ask them unusual questions, because I feel like that's when you get a sense of how they process information. Like just like you throw something a little random at them and be like, oh, and watch the wheels turn. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, one of the things that I know Adam was liking to throw at him was their biggest pet peeve. And
football
we got
pet peeve. Yeah.
Football pet peeve. We got some good answers from everybody. All right, next up, another offensive lineman Marcus Weir of Montana State. Played tackle at Montana State University, but also I think he played, or did he play just guard and bump in? But anyway, he was playing guard throughout the week. Played a little bit of center too, but a guy that I think at the next level he would be expected to play at the guard spot. 3-year starter, a guy who transitioned from playing defense, and that was one of the
Yeah.
things that we asked him about too. 2-time first team All American in the Big Sky, and PFF ranked him highly as well. 6'4", 300-pound guy. And on the slide there, Adam, cowboy hat wearer. This is a true Montanan, even though he's from the east side of Montana.
Yeah, no, a true Billings boy through and through. It just just chatting with him. I mean, it felt so much like chatting with any other, dude that has rolled out of that area. Just down to earth, really nice guy. Just not a lot of it kind of no nonsense, just kind of like, yep, it's this and it's that. And just very simple. Not that he was simple-minded or anything, but just simple, straightforward answers, which I enjoyed in a guy that you talk about the quarterbacks and looking at them and guys looking smaller or bigger. The measurable 6'4", 300. That's what it says on the screen. He looked smaller than the other guys.
He did, and and maybe it's because we interviewed him right after CJ West, who looked bigger than because he was listed at 6'2", 300, and then you talk to Weir, who's 6'4", 300, and to the measurements versus the size, and that was one of the things in the sideline conversation that we got into while we were watching practice too. That's one of the things that the scouts try and pick up on when they go to these events too. Like, do they really measure up to what their measurements have said that they are throughout their college career?
Yep, absolutely. We even saw one of the DBs getting measured up in the interview lobby and them taking him. And, that's one thing that I wanted to get into, but we didn't in some of the interviews, is just how much it feels like these guys are kind of like cattle. And I don't know. If I were going through the process, I think it would bother me a little bit. I mean, I understand that they have to do all that stuff so that they have a baseline for the draft process and everything. But it feels a little dehumanizing, man. Like, stick your arm out, oh yeah, no, he's got a 32-inch wingspan, whatever. Oh, you said you were 289. No, you're actually 310, or I don't know. It's just weird to me.
Well, and some of these guys might be putting on weight in trying to bulk up for NFL. Some of them even, get asked to slim down. So you don't know necessarily where they are in that process, what an NFL scout or their agents are telling them what they need to do to get ready for these events. So they could be in fluctuation of their weight too. So,
yeah.
But yeah, we actually had the comment about cattle and offensive linemen, comparing offensive line to cattle. So that made sense, I think, as a Montana style answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcus held his own all week. I definitely saw other prospects there where I was like, yeesh, I don't know how that's going to work in the league. And, watching him hold up to some of the higher end talent that was there at Shrine Bowl, you're like, okay, I think this guy has a shot for sure.
Yeah. And that stood out as well. And one of the things that you're looking for whether it's at Shrine, whether it's at the Senior Bowl, they invite guys from a lot of these smaller schools, and they because they want to see how they hold up against, whether it's an SEC defensive lineman or a Big Ten defensive lineman. And Weir absolutely looked like he belonged when he was out there on the field. So that was cool.
It was cool. And good dude all the way around. And that's the other thing I took away from this, Brandon. I would be terrible at, like, if I were the GM, I don't want the interviews. I want everybody else to do the interviews and just be like, good guy, bad guy, whatever, right? Like somebody I trust.
Yeah.
I'd be terrible with it. Like, it would be so hard to be like, I like the dude so much to be objective on the tape. And, that's one of those things. Like, I haven't got to watch the type of stuff I wanted to watch of Ken Miller yet for doing quarterbacks. And I know for a fact it's going to be hard for me to separate How
disassociate
much
that
I
because
enjoy chatting with the guy in
right.
comparison to what's on the tape. Yeah.
Another fun interview, and this was one that came about just last minute, just because we happened to be in the room when a lot of these guys are walking around, and they came up to us and they said, "Oh, do you want to talk to Keontae Hamilton?" And Keontae was a player that we hadn't had a chance to really even look at because he missed the first 2 days of Shrine Bowl practice, and then he showed up on Monday. So maybe he just didn't stand out necessarily on Monday when we were at practice, but then we interviewed Monday afterward, and just a fun dude to talk to, and gosh, a really smart player, a guy who had gone to the Hula Bowl and then got this late call up because one of the things that
Yeah.
they do if guys either get hurt or if they decide, hey, I got in a couple good days of practice and now I'm not going to play in the game, they have guys on speed dial. And Keontae Hamilton was one of those guys that called him up and said, "Hey, can you be here?" And he hops on a plane, shows up, and then all of a sudden he's practicing at Shrine and getting ready for the game. And a guy that we ultimately saw play in the game on Thursday.
Yeah, as you mentioned, a late addition you kind of drill down into that and maybe some other adversity or weirdness throughout the draft process or whatever it's been leading up to this point. And for Keontae, all of this is no worries, man. I'm ready to roll whenever they ask me to. I know I can play and I'm ready to rock. A very not in a braggadocious way at all, just a very confident person who just like, look, whatever comes my way, I got it. And just roll me out there. I'm ready to rock.
Well, and that was one of the things that we got into with him in the interview is the idea that, hey, you're coming into a new situation. You have guys who have been here for a couple days, and how do you then insert yourself and be just one of the guys that's leading up to the game? And obviously, with his personality, he would have no problem. And when you talk about the height and weight thing, Keontae looked every bit of 6'4", 300 pounds.
100%. Yeah, no, he definitely looks apart. And one of the things that I enjoyed seeing at the game, and it's a small thing, but playing end, they had him out on end quite a bit.
Mhm.
And when they ran away from him, stretch plays away from him, how much he did his job perfectly on the backside to prevent things from being cut back his direction. Whether that's buzzing down the backside of the offensive lineman or making sure that edge is sealed. A heady player. And that's a guy that came in, had already missed a practice or two, and was just like, yeah, throw me out there. You want me to contain the backside edge? Got it.
Whatever you need me to do. Played a
Yeah.
little inside, played a little outside, and that's a little bit of what he did at Rutgers with his 35 tackles, 4 sacks, had a couple batted passes. I know that's something Clinton always looks for. So yeah, if you can get some batted passes, they're going up on the slide. Clinton's putting it on there.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think that's something that as we see the game evolve, I think that's a place on the defensive line that can be elevated. Like I think that's something that can be coached up even more and emphasis even more for teams. And I think that's a place the whole league can improve.
You think Rutgers just has all of the academic, all Big Ten guys on their team? Like
They
who are
seem
you
to.
competing? Who are you competing with as Rutgers? Like for the other academic All Americans?
All right. So this is no shot at Marcus, but it's definitely not Montana State. We know that there's no geniuses coming out of there as a Grizz fan.
Well, they're not in Big Ten.
Yeah, I know. But
Big Ten's like Michigan, Ohio State, like
okay,
right?
not necessarily known as the
Academic
bastions
schools.
of
Yeah.
academia, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no knock on those people either. But Rutgers, I feel like, is a more academic school anyway.
A little more of a smarty pants place for sure.
Next up, quarterback Kyle McCord, Syracuse University. We're getting into the guys that we didn't have a chance to talk to, but I wanted to talk a little Kyle McCord with you, Adam, because this was one of the guys that we kept hearing throughout the week. Oh, Kyle McCord's stock's going up at Shrine Bowl. His stock right now, like and watching him in practice, I don't know how his stock went up or down because he was just another one of the dudes that were out there practicing at quarterback.
Honestly, in the drills and everything, I don't know how you can make that statement, but boy, it almost feels like there's some predetermined narratives for the first couple days, especially when all the agents are there and all the NFL guys are there and all the media is there. It feels like just one thing kind of gets put out into the ether in like school children. It kind of just like filters through the sidelines where everybody's standing. And then by the end of the day, oh man, Kyle McCord had himself a day. Doing what? Doing what? Just like all the quarterbacks. I'm not just picking on Kyle here. Like, yeah.
Throwing to dudes who are kind of open in practice.
Yeah. I didn't see anything that really stood out there.
Here's what I think it was with McCord. I think with Shadur not practicing, he probably had the strongest arm of the group.
Maybe.
And in terms of size, like he looked like out of the guys that were on the field, he kind of looked the part more than the other guys that I saw, more so than Rosemer out there, more so than the kid that could run quite a bit that we ended up
Brady Cook.
Yeah, Brady Cook.
Yeah. Rosemer and McCord look pretty similar to me, just the way they are put together. Cook's a little longer, ganglier kind of guy, but he can scoot. That's for sure. I mean, when you're talking, what was Cam's dimensions? 6'1", 212? Is that what you had up there? And we're talking about 6'3", 220. They didn't look all that different to me, man. Kyle didn't look any more suited for the position than any other dude to me personally. I didn't see anything that he did throughout the week that I was like, oh my stars, look at that. That is a special kind of arm talent compared to the rest of the guys. I think just by putting the slide out, like that, his stock is back up. When you take it down, it'll probably go back down. It was just kind of absurd to me. Not that Kyle did anything wrong. Like, I'm not even killing the guy.
Yeah. Other than not playing in the game, like he was there on the sideline. Like I felt like because he got all of this boost from the news in the first couple days, it was like, oh, well, I don't need to play.
Yeah. One thing that I didn't realize the stats, because again, this is a part of the process that I don't use when grading the college guys. I don't look at their stats. I don't care. Yards don't matter unless your rushing yards throughout a year is -65. Holy hell. That's the antithesis of a dual threat quarterback at that point.
Not a dual threat quarterback. No, apparently not. So that might lead you to believe that he may be more of a pocket style quarterback, wouldn't it?
The little bit I'd watched, I mean, that was one of my takeaways is, yeah, okay, this is more of a pocket guy, which isn't the end of the world either. But yeah.
But usually
65.
when it comes to college guys, these are guys that when it breaks down, they're looking to run.
Yeah. Yeah. For the most part, no doubt about it. And a lot of guys live in that part of their game. And that's not where Kyle McCord is. He's got a little chucker in him.
A little bit. And that was apparent, I think, in practice too.
Yeah.
We got to see who the chuckers were.
Oh, for sure. And if there's one thing that I know from that QB's coach, get it up, Kyle. Yeah, you need to blue pill those.
Nick Nash, a wide receiver, San Jose State University, 6'3", 195 pounds, 104 receptions in his final year of college, 1,382 yards and 16 touchdowns. This was a guy, when we were standing and watching some of those throws by McCord on the sideline, Nash he had one of the catches of the practice, the 4 days at practice, just because got thrown his way. I think the corner tipped it, or he got a hand on it too, and had that concentration then to come down with the football. Nash was also one of the guys that Cam Miller called out as one of the teammates that he thought would do really well going into the NFL. He was first team All-Pro All-American in 2024, Litnikoff finalist, and one of the standout receivers throughout the week.
Okay. I did see the one nice catch. That's cool.
He had a couple when they were doing the goal line stuff too. He did not drop a lot of passes.
He didn't drop a lot of passes. He didn't stand out to me either, other than having that Cooper Cup name, Nick Nash.
Yeah, Nick Nash.
You couldn't possibly just say one of his names, right? It's always.
I'm not going to lie. That's also why I put him up on one of these slides.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably
Cooper Cup, Nakua, Nick Nash. They all go together.
I know that he was one of the dudes that you were more excited about through the week than myself, but that doesn't mean anything because when it comes to grading wide receivers, especially in practice, I'm not the guy to listen to. I'm just going to tell you that.
Grading wide receivers, even grading defensive backs to a certain extent. Yeah, I was going
Yeah.
back and looking at some of the coverage from the week just because while we were there, it was hard to, I wasn't like on my phone looking at the articles
Yeah.
because I saw like Shiloh Sanders was one of the stock down guys
What?
at corner. Yeah. Well,
Well, no, isn't he a linebacker?
I thought he was corner, defensive back.
Oh, I thought he was a linebacker. Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
He might have been playing nickel,
Okay.
but one of the stock down guys. And I guess he had a few reps early on that didn't look great. And then I felt like he showed out a little bit more on some of the drills. But regardless, it's again, corner, those guys are going to get beat in practice, especially when in these Shrine Bowl practices where the wide receiver, there's nobody else on the field except one other corner, and they can. It's not like they have a determined route that they have to run. They're just, I'm going to stop on a dime here, go the other way, and the quarterback's going to throw it to me. Like there's no way. It's so against the corners in these drills.
It completely is. And it does kind of highlight just how much that the corners know based off of film study, alignments, splits, different route combinations throughout their film study so that they can anticipate where the receiver's going because the receiver has a massive advantage knowing where he's going and the DB doesn't. So Shiloh, a safety. So there's why my confusion because he was playing down in the box a fair amount, had some nice hits in the game as well. The idea that he was stocked down throughout the week.
He was stocked down early, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
and it was just because of those one-on-one drills.
Okay. Well, then maybe it turned around for him because I think I liked a little bit of what I saw.
Next up, tight end Luke Lachey,
Mhm.
6'6", 247 pounds. And Clinton did well to point out exactly why I think Lachey was on our radar and why we wanted to watch him while we were at Shrine Bowl. Just when you go down the list of Iowa tight ends, Dallas Clark, Noah Fant, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, he fits in with all those guys, has the size, looks every bit of that 247, and a guy who dropped nothing that I could see when we were at Shrine.
Yeah, because he probably only had like 3 balls thrown to him. I don't know who was running the offense for both these teams, but there wasn't a lot of tight end play in the passing game where you're like, oh, wow, look at that, because they were never targeted. Never. You talk about.
Well, Gadsden, I guess they put Gadsden out wide a few times too. And he was a guy that he had tight end by his name, but he is not tight end size.
No, he's definitely doesn't have the weight to him to. I mean, maybe he can put it on and maybe he can bulk up a little bit and be a tight end. I don't know, but he's definitely the guy that everybody talked about as a tweener. Where Lachey here, I mean, this guy's a true tight end in terms of his stature. Looked fine in the blocking element of stuff. The little bit that I did watch of tight ends blocking, I was a little preoccupied with offensive linemen for the majority of the week, but a guy that has the pedigree, has the size, all the measurements in. I mean, I'd be intrigued. I would think that we're going to need to bring in a little bit more tight end talent with the way that we're going here offensively for the Seahawks.
Yeah, definitely seems like a need, and that was part of the reasoning here, putting Lachey on there. Another guy that was talked about quite a bit throughout the week, running backs. While you're at Shrine, these guys, it's so hard to tell whether or not a guy is going to be good just based on a Shrine Bowl practice. I would just go watch game tape as far as running backs go. But Taj Brooks was there, 5'10", 230 pounds, rushed for 1,500 yards in his final year there at Texas Tech. And he was the reason why I wanted to talk about him was just because of that expectation. And then talk about, too, a little bit of guys who are NFL size. And this fits right in those windows, the measurements of running backs that John Schneider maybe on the weight side a little bit higher than where they like to go, but 5'10" running back. He was just a guy that I wanted to see a little bit of based on how he fit into that mold. And yeah, a guy who I could see kind of a mid-round running back type guy. I'd like to go watch a little bit more of his tape, but everybody was talking about throughout the week, oh, Taj Brooks is going to go off in the game after, having to go through practice and not really get to do much. But then we didn't really see much Brooks.
He played a bit. I mean, he got the majority of the carries in the first half, or whichever side he was on, East or West. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think he was on. I can't remember.
I can't either. I need to go back and watch the game if I'm going to evaluate Taj Brooks, because as you mentioned, I think the only position group that had to do less during the practices was the special teamers, because the coaches had seemingly no interest in practicing running plays. Like, it was very, very sparse.
Yeah. Well, when you say special teamers, you mean the punter, the kicker, the long snapper. They didn't even put them in the building. They had to go outside and practice in the mist.
Yeah. I feel like they practiced punt and kickoff return coverage more than they practiced run plays throughout the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it was the gunners, I saw a lot of gunner practice drills throughout the week. That was the one thing that stood out.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, because you're talking about a lot of smaller school guys and all that, that might be a place that they make it in the NFL. So they're trying to showcase that for all the people that are standing around the sidelines watching.
Next up, this was a player who stood out, I thought, more so during the game than necessarily in any of the practices, and that's defensive back Tyron Herring out of Delaware, 6'2", 195. During the game, Tyron was all around the football. And also a guy that being able to watch the game down on the field, like you could feel when he hit guys.
You could feel it. He plays with a physicality. Did he cause a fumble? I can't recall. But yeah, as you said, like they turned it over like 3 times early in the game in the first half, and he was involved and or like right there for all 3 of them. In terms
I
of
just
practice,
remember it was one of those questions like he might have had one of the interceptions and then been around one of the fumbles or caused the fumble. It was just when we were sitting and watching the game, I was like, oh, Tyron is around the ball on every one of these plays.
100%. In my eye, watching him in one-on-ones, which as we described is ridiculously tilted in the wide receiver's favor, I thought he held up, if not the best, one of the better DBs throughout the week. Made a lot of nice plays. And guys seem to really be pulling for him too. Like the teammates seemed excited about him as well. I 6'2", 195. Sounds a lot like a future Hall of Famer that we once had roaming the secondary.
More so than Kobe Bryant, who, not to be confused with Seahawks Kobe Bryant, but the Kobe Bryant at Shrine, who was, he's right about 6 foot, but he was 171 pounds. And he didn't even look like he was 171 pounds when we walked past him on the sideline. But when you mentioned guys just who are sticky in terms of their coverage, even when being kind of at a disadvantage, Kobe Bryant stood out in some of those coverage drills.
I'm going to lie and say he didn't, because I don't want another Kobe Bryant on my team.
You don't want it. That's fine.
I mean, I just, as a Celtics fan, that's too many Kobe Bryants. No, thank you.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
This was the running back that I think stood out the most, and well, because he was the Shrine Bowl offensive player of the game. And that's why I was wondering if maybe you got Taj Brooks confused with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who was the University of Arizona running back, because he was the guy that had the touchdown. He was the guy that was carrying the football for it was the East squad, because the East squad got the win. And just because he was the guy that stood out during the game, and I figured we should talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, he got a lot of carries as well. No, I hadn't had him confused, but
okay.
I saw both of them.
So maybe West. I think Taj Brooks must have been the running back for the West.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking up right here. Yeah, he was from the West, I believe. So that makes a little more sense there. But yes, Krosky-Merritt made a lot of plays. kind of what we're hearing about a lot of these running backs is that this class is just chocked full of guys who could, come out there and be Chuba Hubbard,
Right.
right? Like a good, solid NFL running back that you could pick up and down the draft board. So I think he falls very much into this category, and probably trying to, I guess he is this the guy that had like the cup of coffee at Arizona, like, and then had the weird eligibility
Yeah, he was at
stuff.
Alabama originally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he didn't quite get to finish. Yeah, there are a couple guys that were using that way too. But
Yeah.
again, a guy who fits into the mold of Seahawks running backs of being 5'11", 208 pounds, right in the windows of measurements that John Schneider looks for. He looks the part, plays the part, and I figured we needed to talk about him a little bit.
Yeah.
But not a guy that I necessarily stood out during practice to me either.
No. This is one of the guys that, solid all the way around.
All right. Well, that does it for our list of players. Any players that we didn't put up on the slide, Adam, that you wanted to make sure that we talked about here before we get going on and talking a little bit of Klint Kubiak?
I kind of like that receiver from Tennessee, the tall, lanky one. He had some nice down the field stuff, but yeah, that'd be about it.
There was the Colorado wide receiver that probably had Will Shepherd had the catch of the practice.
Yeah, no, he looked good. I thought throughout the week, and that catch was unreal. Just a one-handed stab in the back of the end zone. It was on the sideline that we were standing on, Brandon, and all I could see was just ball going towards the corner on a fade, and all of a sudden, just his one hand stuck up above the crowd, bink, just grabbed it, came down with it, made a hell of a catch.
Dante Thornton is the Tennessee wide receiver.
Yeah, I liked his speed and kind of some of the things he was able to do, but again, not my forte, grading wide receivers.
No, that's fine. You stick to the quarterback stuff, man.
Yeah, man. Just know what you do well and know what you don't. Like, I think that's important, and being able to admit what you don't.
We're expecting to hear from Klint Kubiak this week in a press conference, hopefully. But after Shrine Bowl, after Senior Bowl, sure they'll be coming back to the VMAC, and that'll provide them with that opportunity to put in front of the Seahawks media. And yeah, some of the takeaways what were some of the takeaways? Just even watching a little bit of Saint stuff that we did just this past week.
Confirming a lot of the things that I had, thought I knew about Klint Kubiak in terms of condensed splits with the wide receivers and running with, two tight ends or with a H-back or a fullback, and, some creativity there as well. One of the things, watching a little bit today that stood out was, you think of the Kubiak system as being primarily wide zone, and seeing them mix up their, run blocking in terms of gap scheme stuff and zone blocking scheme stuff, and having it be a little more of a mix. Knowing Alvin Kamara had the type of year that he did is exciting when you're thinking about, the Ken Walkers of the world and that sort of thing. But I think from a 6, I'm going to a 7 on Kubiak. You're definitely raising your 4 because that's absurd, dude. No more. Who cares about the process? This is the guy. Like, get rid of that. Like, this is your dude now.
Oh, well, when we talked about and we're ranking it just based on our excitement level. Yeah, it was excitement level based on the process. But when it comes to the guy, I'd be right at a 7 too. He just seems like it's going to be an upgrade just based off of the NFL experience part, coming from the Shanahan system, having that level of understanding, being the passing game coordinator that year that Brock Purdy had a really good year. Well, that was 2023 was the Super Bowl year. So yeah, passing game coordinator, they performed really well in the passing game. A lot of that also going to be Shanahan because it's his offense, but you have a little bit of that influence. You also pointed out the zone scheme with Kamara, and how I think that's going to fit a lot better with the way that Ken Walker runs the football. I think that Kamara had a good season, but I think you could have, well, I guess when you combine his receiving and his rushing, it was probably closer to like a 1,600-yard season, but he didn't run for more than 1,000 yards on the ground.
It was close.
It was like 950. So yeah, it was close.
Yeah.
And I think he was injured for a couple weeks too. But looking at some of those games, especially, I went and I wanted to look at how they performed in some of those close games because they were in probably 6 or 7 one-score games throughout the season, and it was never a sense of getting away from running the football. Like it still continued to be a balanced attack. And so that was one of the more standout things. And one of the things that got me a little bit more interested in Kubiak is that, yeah, when it comes down to those final moments, they're not getting away from running the football, and unless it was under 2 minutes and that's all you had to do, or under a minute, and trying to score. But very much staying balanced on the offense.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was trying to figure out here is that we look at some of the offensive stats from when he was in Minnesota. We look at some of the offensive stats when he is the OC there in New Orleans, and we see that balanced attack. We see, kind of mid-tier numbers in terms of scoring for both these teams, and a little less than mid-tier for the Saints last year. And it's like, okay, well, if you're getting mid-tier numbers out of your running game and your passing game, like you would hope for a little bit better in the scoring department, because if you're mid in both running and passing, your overall offense is probably fairly high, right? Because usually, like the Seahawks, if you're huge in your passing numbers this year, your rushing numbers are pretty abysmal. And I was wondering, well, how could that possibly be? And one of the things I thought about is, the Saints get rid of their head coach midseason, defensive head coach, and Dennis Allen. And if he was going to stay on as head coach, you would think the defense had been playing very well, but obviously, had a hard time getting off the field. New Orleans 29th in time of possession throughout this season. And then you look at his time in Minnesota, his head coach gets fired at the end of that year because the defense had fallen off. It wasn't necessarily about the offense that there was regime change there in Minnesota. They were like 24th in time of possession, which reminds me a lot of some of the last couple of years of the Seahawks teams with Pete, where the defense was so abysmal that it really did hurt the offense because they just never had the football because it was just getting jellied down your throat all game. And so I think that helps to explain some of the scoring numbers and why that maybe doesn't add up to some of the other offensive totals.
Yeah, they just didn't have. Well, that's a talent issue too, especially with the Saints this past year.
Yeah.
They dealt with injuries so much throughout the year. That's what makes it so hard to evaluate, and why I tried to go and really dig into some of those late game moments where they were still in it, and those games where Kamara's in it, they're trying to feed the football to him, especially with him being one of their top players. Olave missed half the season. Their other receiver, who's the burner, missed a bunch of time too. So
Shaheed,
Rashid Shaheed. So that's why maybe the tight end numbers end up looking pretty good too, because who else were they going to throw to throughout the season? Part of it you could be excited about too, just because that they're actually using that. But just not a lot of talent on that Saints squad. And that's another thing that makes it hard to be excited about, right?
Oh, I think it's the opposite. Think about it in these terms. One of the most annoying things about facing Sean McVay year in, year out, twice a year, is that half the time when we face them, we're facing half their B squad. It's happened a zillion times. And the B squad plays freaking well and competitive in a game that they should have no place being competitive. And I think that's a marker of great coaching, is what do you do when the talent level is lesser? And you watch Kubiak take a team that was decimated with injuries, not just 9 different offensive linemen throughout the year. 9. Like, we thought we had a lot this year. 9 is an insane amount. Insane. And skill position banged up. you're already starting the season with the corpse of Derek Carr. You make him look good. And then you're in the Jake Hayner, Spencer Rattler realm of quarterbacks. Like, they're some of the worst of the backups. And you're still managing to make a mediocre offense out of that. To me, that raises my excitement level because that's a sign of great coaching.
And that does point to, especially the opponents, where they were in these close games with. As I watched, so it was 6 games where they had game-winning drive opportunities. Week 3 versus the Eagles, which they're going to be in the Super Bowl coming up this week. Falcons, Panthers division games, those are going to be close. But the Falcons were toward the top of the division. Then the other 3 games were all playoff teams. So Eagles was 1. They played the Rams close, played the Commanders close, and played the Buccaneers close in the final week of the season.
Yeah.
And so even without that talent, there's 3 games late in the season against playoff teams that they had opportunities to get the game-winning score. They came up short, but they were right in it throughout the game.
Right in it. And never forget, that's also without their head coach. I mean, the head coach gets canned relatively early in the season. I mean, you think about a tumultuous season, and that's the 2024 Saints. And for him to have some sort of productive, normal-looking offense throughout the whirlwind that was that year, I think is impressive. And basically had to do the same thing with his one opportunity in Minnesota as well.
All right. Well, that is what stood out just from these past few days with Klint Kubiak. Adam?
Oh, there's more. There's more. We're going to get into it on our breakdown of Commanders Saints with Clinton a little later in the week. I'm saving some stuff.
Yeah. Stick around for that.
Yeah.
Let's get to the second half of the show. Getting into the second half of the show, and I think we have to mention it just because today is the day. The Pro Bowl's happening, and we've got 3 Seahawks players in the Pro Bowl. We've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. We've got Leonard Williams. We've got Devin Witherspoon, and JSN even has a touchdown in this game.
Oh, good for him. As we discussed, Brandon, as we were driving around, they were doing Pro Bowl alternates for the AFC.
Yeah.
And did Drake May make it? Was that the name
that was
that
the
I
one?
was like,
Yeah,
it's like, are you catfish kidding me? Over Bo Nix? Like, what are we talking about?
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
I don't even understand. Yeah, because people are making a big deal about Russ getting in. Russell Wilson making his, 11th Pro Bowl?
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Russ over Bo Nix this year? Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
At that point, when I start seeing things like that with this Pro Bowl that I've become more and more disillusioned with, I am officially in the camp of don't give a shit about the Pro Bowl anymore. I don't care who's been nominated. I don't think it's a legit award anymore. It's just a joke, and it's time for it all to go.
Another thing that I saw in the news, the Seahawks were among the lowest in terms of television viewing audience this past season. Adam, they were in the bottom third of the league, despite having one of the top of the market teams. Although we weren't that far behind the Rams, which I thought was also interesting. But we were behind the Rams, which infuriated me.
Well, and the only reason that we fell behind the Rams is that the league forces people to watch the Rams a hell of a lot more than they force people to watch the Seahawks by putting them in primetime or standalone games and all that sort of thing. So, yeah. So congrats to all 3 of those Rams fans again. Good job.
Do you feel like that's a symptom of anything, any kind of cause for concern that now that you're dropping toward the bottom of the league for viewership? Like, is that concerning at all to you? Or, I mean, we're going to watch either way, but it does indicate, and I feel like we even see it with downturns in the number of people that listen to the show or watch on YouTube. Like, I think the interest is down a little bit. And despite with it being, I think, one of the more interesting seasons for the Seahawks, with it being a new head coach and Mike McDonald, like, there were some things to tune in and watch with this year, with it being a new defensive style head coach that I think brings a little bit more excitement than maybe we'd seen in the past couple years.
Well, I think you kind of answered a few of your own questions here. One, they bring in a new head coach who isn't Bill Belichick or, any of the big names, right?
Yeah.
Young, fresh faced guy. And to a lot of football fans, like somebody that you're familiar with, but to the average viewing populace, like Mike McWho, like who gives a crap? And then on top of that, he's a defensive guy. And again, the average, person that tunes into football on a Sunday, they're looking for their fantasy numbers and offensive production. So that's not exciting. Geno Smith is not an exciting name at quarterback. Like, when you talk about a duel between Stafford and Smith, it doesn't exactly make people get super excited. And then you're in that tier of team where you're in the mediocre tier, which you're not bad enough to be exciting by having picked a couple of young guys in the draft that spring that you really want to see. How's this dude going to do in the league? And you're not good enough to where you're thumping people to where people are like, my God, I want to watch the Seahawks defense suffocate, the next opponent or anything like that. So I think they're just kind of stuck there. And as far as what that means for the team, diddly poo. And I think the only thing that matters less than yards maybe is Nielsen numbers.
I think it matters to the owners and the part of the ownership group that
win more.
You got to win more. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think that offense versus defense, I don't know if I buy that part of it necessarily, because when did Seattle have its biggest boom in terms of the number of people who were watching? It was the Legion of Boom. And that was a primarily defensive oriented team. And I think that fans rallied around that defense.
Yeah, no, they did. I'm not saying that defense can't attract eyeballs, but when you're comparing a pretty good defensive team to a pretty good offensive team, you're going to get a lot more eyeballs on the pretty good offensive team. Okay. If you have a dominant, once in a generation defense that's laying people out with the likes of Bam Bam freaking Cam out there and Bobby and Sherm and, that whole crew, just wrecking houses and taking people's souls. Yeah, that's going to bring in more viewership for sure.
Well, one of the guys behind that is Pete Carroll, Adam. Pete Carroll being hired by the Raiders as their head coach. And we found out this week too, Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator, a guy who we weren't at all excited about, but yet Pete Carroll, head coach of the Raiders now, has him coordinating the offense for Vegas.
Is it like there's got to be some law against a USC guy and a UCLA guy working together like this, right?
It doesn't seem right. That's for sure.
No, it doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem like a coach that Pete would go for, just given his NFL background. Apparently, he's found the light in college on running the rock. I guess, maybe, sure. But I'm stoked for Pete. I am stoked for Pete. I think this is a great situation. I think a lot of people make a big hubbubaloo about nothing with Tom Brady being involved. That dude's got 1,000 irons in the fire.
But Adam, Tom Brady picked Pete Carroll over Bill Belichick.
Yeah, Bill Belichick was also under contract, and it would have cost $10 million to get him. So there's that.
I don't think that. Well, I guess maybe that would matter to Mark Davis. Maybe not so much to Tom Brady. It's not his money.
Yeah. I mean, $10 million is like legit cheddar. I don't think they just want to light that on fire. But no, I think it's a good hire. The Raiders desperately need a guy to set a culture and a direction. They've needed that for years and years. And that's Pete Carroll. I am secretly rooting for the reunion with Russ. I don't know about you. Do you think that's happening?
Russ said today that his focus is on the Steelers. Pete didn't want to get into it when asked about it, but I think they're kind of in that situation too, where Russ is probably he wants to be in contract talks leading up to free agency. And as the head coach of another team with Pete Carroll, you're not allowed to talk about players really that are still under contract with their current team. So he can't hype it up either. But yeah, in terms of secretly rooting for it, I've heard enough of people going, oh, well, the relationship between Russ and Pete is now irreparable based on the way that Russ got his way out of Seattle. And I think of, well, were you not watching when Pete Carroll, his retirement slash firing, mostly firing, came around and Russ was on a plane like overnight and there and celebrating with Pete after he got let go? Like, he didn't have to be there, but yet he made the trip, came up, and was there for Pete.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a hard time separating professional and personal things. I never thought in a million years that the rift between Pete and Russ was personal. I think it was always about professional. And at that given point in time, Russ hadn't figured out that he needs to live in the land as being one of the best play action quarterbacks of all time, and that he wasn't Drew Brees, and that probably wasn't going to be good for his game. He needed to be a sous chef, not so much the head cook. And I think he's come to realize what his strengths and weaknesses are at this point in his career, and knows that Pete could get the most out of him yet again. And on a personal level, they seem to be just fine. You talk about the retirement party. You talk about Russ's comments about having two great men and coaches in his life, and definitely leaving out Sean Payton and definitely putting in Pete Carroll. That tells you a little bit of what you need to know there. I think that rift, Peyton and Russ, I think that's way more personal.
Well, I feel like Sean Payton made that personal.
Absolutely.
Just the way that was handled, that entire, gosh, what was it, last 5, 6, 7 games of his Denver Broncos career. So, yeah. If it were Sean Payton, absolutely not. No chance for a reunion with Pete Carroll. I think the chance is there. I just don't want it to happen because I don't want to become a Raiders fan at all.
You could root for. This is easy, man. This is easy. Your sports hate for the Raiders doesn't have to die. You can root for personal individual success, like much like Sherm going to the Niners or Bobby going wherever he went for that 1 year. Where you're like, I wish you personal success, but I hope your team goes 2-12. You know, or
how does that work with Pete Carroll as head coach, though?
I don't know. Just have him be competitive and
hand
fun.
in hand.
Have him be competitive and fun, and show that his philosophy still works in terms of culture setting. I don't know, but
I don't know if that.
Look, they're not going to win a crap ton of games there. Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs. Man, that's tough. That's the best coach division in football now.
It is tough. It's going to make it a real uphill battle for Pete. And I wish the franchise of the Raiders, zero success, and Pete Carroll, all the success, and how that balances out, I have no idea.
Me neither, but I'm along for the ride. And again, I'm thrilled for Pete. If it's what he wanted to do, if Glenda wanted him out of the house, like, all the better. Like, I'm fired up for the guy.
Also, hearing Marshawn shout out Raiders during Pete Carroll's introductory press conference, also kind of gross.
Yeah, that was GR double gross. Yeah.
I don't want to share Marshawn. I understand. That's his team. Gosh. I also thought it was cool that he was there for Pete Carroll's press conference. And
oh, yeah. That's super cool. Super cool.
Dang it. See, stop making me even think about cheering for the Raiders. Gross.
Again, all right. Just think of it as like fantasy football.
Are they my fantasy team now? Is that what?
It's kind of the bizarro alternate Seahawks universe, especially if Russ goes there.
Yeah. Maybe Bobby gets one more year in too.
You never know. He could be back with the Commanders for all we know.
He doesn't look like he has any plans of retiring anytime soon.
No.
We're not retiring anytime soon because of your generous support. Those of you who've gone to getintheflock.com. Those of you donating at $3 and above, you get into our Discord chat. We're there on game day. We're there throughout the off season. It's been a fun time, leading up to the draft. We'll have special events where we're going to be chatting in there throughout the off season too. So you do want to be there, and you can also support us at really any level that you choose. This is value for value, Adam. If you find value in this show enough that you're tuning in every week, you want to hear what we're doing, the guys that we're looking at down in Shrine Bowl. If you find value in that, you can pick the number that you feel that you receive in value, and you can return it to us that way.
Absolutely. If you are listening to just this one particular show, I think that tells you that you like this show more than maybe even you want to admit, because we're talking all-star college football and a coaching hire. So if you're watching now, you're getting value out of this, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, this is just not the during the season, what we saw in the games, what we're going to see coming up in future games. No, we are in the off season, and yeah, we're glad that you're tuning in. And like Adam said, if you're still finding value, you can go to getintheflock.com. You can go to seahawkerspodcast.com/support. And we have our 3 executive producers, DCH, Ryan Peterson, who is our YouTube Live executive producer, and JC Schilling and the 313th. And one person providing value this week is Benjamin Adam, who came in with a $50 donation via PayPal.
Oh man, that's super awesome. It's because of folks like Benjamin, man. Like we're able to go down to Dallas, have this experience, meet a lot of cool people, and try to up the production value of the show a little bit. So Benjamin, man, thank you for a very generous $50. That's amazing.
Big thanks to Benjamin. Thanks to, I swear there's a donation that I missed this past week too. So if I did not announce your name this week or in the previous show and I just missed it, just let me know. I want to make sure and recognize everybody that we do.
Yeah. Send an email to Brandon and scold him.
Go Hawks at seahawkerspodcast.com. You don't have to scold me. You can just
scold
say, hey,
him.
No, you just say you missed it and I'll get you on the next show.
No, it needs to be like, dude, I'm not even mad, but I am disappointed in you.
Okay, there we go.
You could go full dad tone there.
Yeah, I take dad tone. It's just the tone I don't need is that you didn't read my donation note and now I'm never listening again. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Because that would be weird.
Yeah, it's not like you're trying to, just eschew people and their generosity. Yeah.
You know who's trying? It's the people who are leading our Pick'em League that you and I long ago bowed out on.
Yeah, that 2-week mill trip that just discombobulated my whole end of the season. Like I just stopped caring about picks, and but I do care deeply about the idea that I get texts almost weekly now from Bronco Jared about the Pick'em League and how well he's doing. So all of you little flockers out there who are leading him, I need you to keep going and keep him down. That's something that's important to me.
Well, Jared Tim is at 198 points right now, so he will not be winning. We don't have to worry about sending any prizes to Jared at this point because
that's good.
He is 10 back of the lead with Fernando Tejada and Wirehawks neck and neck going into the Super Bowl week. And so with 208 correct, who's going to pick the Chief? Who's going to pick the Eagles? If they both pick, it's going to go down to the score for the tiebreaker. We could come down to a score tiebreaker for who wins the Pick'em League this year, Adam.
Oh, that's going to be amazing. High drama in the Pick'em League this year, and congratulations to both those guys, man. Like, it's just hard just to get your picks in every week, let alone crush it like these guys did.
We've also got Lock It Away and Love to Wags My Dixon, both at 205. So they will likely finish in the final 5. But also Toonhawk and Tram Rammers at 204. They have an opportunity to finish in the top 5. One of those 6, one of those 4 that I just mentioned is going to finish outside of the top 5, Adam. So it's going to come down to the pick. It's going to come down to the score. So Lock It Away, Love to Wags My Dixon, Toonhawk, Tram Rammers. Pick well this Super Bowl Sunday.
Absolutely. And for a Super Bowl that I think a lot of us aren't exactly super fired up for, this is something to root for right here.
And I think it would be tough. Like right now, which way are you leaning in terms of Eagles Chiefs? Who do you think?
Just why would I pick against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl with Andy Reid? Like, why?
Because you want somebody different to win. I
honestly don't give a crap. I don't care. I genuinely do not care either way. If the Eagles win, sweet, then, I don't have to listen to Chiefs fans again for another year. That's great, I guess.
Like your dad.
Don't really care. He's good enough about it, like to where it's not so bad. It's mainly Brittany's boss, who's a very casual football fan. but bandwagoned onto the Chiefs right when the Chargers left town down in San Diego, and which is super annoying. So, yeah, that would be fine. I don't particularly care for the Eagles. I don't really want them to have a championship, another one here. So, whatever. And then if the Chiefs win, then first team to three-peat in the Super Bowl era, all that historical stuff. That's kind of fun. Greatness is greatness, so that's cool. But then I have to put up with Chiefs fans and all that. So
I know it's very conflicting.
Yeah. So it boils down to I don't give a shit. Catfish. I don't care.
Where it's interesting for me is that I think there's a lot of defensive talent for the Eagles. Like that part is exciting. Gosh, we watched the play with Jalen Carter in the championship game where he hurdled a running back who was coming to block down on him. He was they left Jalen Carter unblocked. Apart from the running back who was supposed to pick him up just kind of on the away side of the play. Carter just jumps over the top of the dude. So defensively, there's some fun stuff with the Eagles. There's
Chiefs
some
have
fun
a damn good defense.
They have a good defense too, and that's
Chris Jones is. I mean, you could talk about Jalen Carter all day, but if you're like, I need one dude for 1 year, and you get to choose one of those two defensive linemen, I'm taking Chris Jones all day.
Yep, it would be Chris Jones. I feel like they have the more talented group of players, but I think with coaching, that Spagnuolo and that Chiefs defense, like they get a lot out of what they have. They have a lot of talent too, but
they got a lot of talent.
And then players, Saquon Barkley, I could kind of cheer for that. And Jalen Hurts, obviously, I can cheer for with him being a Sooners quarterback. But I know I'm having a hard time. I kind of, if I had to pick a team to root for, probably be the Chiefs.
See, this is the reason why I'm super excited for us to sit down and do a Prop Stars episode for the Super Bowl. We can get in our prop bets, some stuff to make it fun. That's what that's going to be for. So if you are looking for a way to spice this up or to have like a rooting interest to watch me come away and beat the brakes off of everybody in our Super Bowl week bets, tune in. We're going to be recording that Tuesday night, I think.
What's the strategy going to be for you? Are you going to try and pick really far out there parlays so you can kind of make the argument that you should be the winner for the season because you were so far behind? Like, are you trying to make all that back up in the Super Bowl, or are you just trying to win the week?
Yeah, I don't think that this counts towards our season totals.
In your mind, though, does it count toward the season total?
Oh, definitely not. No,
okay. You're trying to win the week then.
I'm trying to forget this last year because after finishing a very close second our first year and then winning the second year and then never getting a coronation show and then just cratering this year.
Yeah.
I never want to think about my bets from this year again, except for this Super Bowl week where I beat the brakes off of all you guys. And I think my strategy, Brandon, is fun. I'm looking for fun bets because that's the cool part about Super Bowl bets, right? There's all sorts of crazy random ones that you can choose. And I'm excited to get into the weeds for those.
All right. Well, we will have that to look forward to. One thing I look forward to every week, it is our emails, Adam. We've got one from the Bard who says, "Hi, fellas. I just wanted to drop you a line to let you know how mightily impressed I was with the last 3 podcasts. They were exactly what I wanted and gave me the information that I couldn't get over. Yeah. You analyzed all the OC candidates and gave us great details about them and all their backgrounds. Then you gave us your opinions on who you like to see get the job. And then we had another episode with details about who got the job and his background. I think these have been the best 3 episodes that you've done, apart from the ones I've been on, obviously. And I congratulate you on the great, well-researched piece of broadcasting, which was a very high standard. Now follow that." The Bard.
Okay. So basically the Bard coming in and John just telling us, hey, you raised the bar on yourself and I'm going to expect you to live up with that or live up to that. Yeah.
Well, that's fine. We set high bars all the time and then either live up to them or don't. It's what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is the opposite of the way I lived my entire life. I'm all about managing expectations, keep the bar low, and then everything's a win. So,
Yeah.
but that's kind words from John. We did put in a fair amount of time on some of those shows in going down to Shrine Bowl, taking a week away from our respected houses and families and lives and all that. You know, trying to take this thing to maybe even another level for all of you little flockers.
There you go. And then that will be provided throughout with the interviews too that we got, and you're going to hear those on the episodes coming up here leading up to the draft. So yeah, big thanks. And as we set the bar high, why don't we set the bar at 500 members at getintheflock.com? Adam, I see that we're currently sitting at 390. There is a free tier. So if those of you who are, still on the fence about whether or not you want to support the show monetarily, you can support the show just by going there and becoming a member. Getintheflock.com, a free member. Of course, if you want to provide a donation at the level that you choose, that is an option too. But yeah, we want to get up to 500 now at getintheflock.com.
Heck yeah, that would be super epic. You guys have been just fantastic supporters. Without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to do this last trip, and just really, really cool. And 500 sounds like a fantastic number. It would match our YouTube subscriber number of 5,000 that we cracked here recently because of all of you fantastic little flockers out there. Yeah, it's been an exciting ride. So we'll see how it goes here.
Only 10 away from 400. Let's at least get to 400 by next week.
Yeah,
we just need 10 of you to go and join, and you can do it as a free member. That's all we're asking.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a step up from being a freeloader. It buys you a freeloading grace period extension.
Right. We're not going to tell you exactly how long it is.
No, that's the fun. Yeah.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
What do you say we get on to some do better and better at life? All
right, man. My do better this week, Brandon, is something I observed as we hung out in Frisco, Texas, which is, a fairly fancy pants kind of area. A lot of gated communities and walls and that sort of thing, kind of everywhere that you look. It's just like the other Frisco out towards the coast, very fancy, a lot of money, just without all the heroin needles and human feces around. Like, it was much cleaner that way. Okay. So that was cool. But one thing that stood out to me, Brandon, that as a guy who owns a dog out in the middle of national forest, right, where he's got hundreds of thousands of acres to just roam in nature, all of the AstroTurf dog parks that are out there, man. AstroTurf, like, can you imagine how many dogs have blown their ACLs out on this fake turf instead of being on natural grass? You can't take the time to give your dog some natural grass to poop on. They got to go out and take a dookie out on the fake grass. Can you imagine how demeaning that is on the inside for your canine companion? There's one that even had like contoured little mini hills and a couple fake fire hydrants out into it. Like, it was just like going into the world's fakest place ever if you're a dog, and you're like, here, you're now free out of the apartment for a half a second. Be free and be a natural dog. Oh, here in fake dog suburbia? Get the catfish out of here. I felt terrible for the other dogs. Get some real grass in there. Prevent some of these dog injuries that I'm sure are occurring from this bad turf. It was bad turf, too. It was like old school Philadelphia Eagles turf, like back in the day. For those of you who remember that, like in the 80s, I just felt bad for him. So for all of these AstroTurf dog parks, do better.
I wonder about dogs and going in those types of areas because it doesn't feel like nature. And I think when you take a dog out, like they don't want to go on some place that feels unnatural. I bet that if I were a dog, I would avoid that, and I would find some grass on the way back to the apartment.
Yeah, I don't quite understand it. It felt
like, are you sure? Weird. Are you sure I can go here? This doesn't feel right.
No, this feels way too much like inside. You get real mad when I do that there. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I do better this week, Adam. I was browsing the news this past week and came across an article titled "Man Dies After Eating Black Licorice."
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. This brought up a lot of questions for me. Just reading the headline, I want to know, well, how did he die? Like, was it because of the licorice, or like, did a licorice loving animal attack him? as he was eating this licorice.
Or was he so distracted by the licorice crossing a crosswalk he got hit by a bus?
Right.
Yeah.
Black licorice, I could see that because nothing good comes from black licorice. And it turns out nothing good comes from eating black licorice because this guy was 54 years old. And for 2 weeks, the guy ate a bag and a half of licorice every day. It didn't say what size bag it was, but it did say bag and a half. So the portion size was at least pretty decent. I don't know if it was a dare or something, or the guy just really liked it. But reading this article, I found out that black licorice contains what is it? Glycyrrhizic acid, Adam.
Oh, yeah.
And
you didn't know that?
no, I did not. It lowers your potassium levels and causes you,
of course,
to have heart problems. So here's the other disturbing thing about this. This article was based on a journal publication that was published in 2020. So it's been 5 years and it's just now being reported on 5 years later. So the other thing I found out is that the FDA already knew about this and they put out a warning, like just I guess a warning email or a warning news story that eating as much as 2 ounces of black licorice every day can cause a person to have an irregular heartbeat. Hershey's got sued because of this in 2021. And the only thing that I could find was that in 2024 that the lawsuit still didn't have a resolution. Yet here it is, 2025. And you look on a big gallon tub of Twizzlers, you look on the back of a thing of black licorice, there's no warning sign about the all the things that are bad that could happen from eating black licorice. So for the manufacturers not warning us about the dangers of black licorice, do better.
Well, I'm not sure I blame the manufacturers here. Like, one thing, if you're 54 years old and you don't know that eating a bag and a half of freaking licorice, whether black or red, daily is going to be good for your deal, like, I don't know what to tell you. You needed to have learned that a lot earlier in life. There's a little natural selection going on there. And so, like,
sugar is one thing.
I was going to say they need to put a diabetes label on the red vines then at the Costco tub if you're so worried about that. I don't need big government in my life letting me know how much is a safe level of licorice or not to eat on the daily. I feel like I'm qualified enough to do that one on my own. But not knowing that black licorice was so dangerous, I guess a cause for concern, because I do like me some black licorice.
Doesn't it feel like that you should know that? Like that should be like you should. There should at least be somewhere that would tell you that because 2 ounces is not a lot. Like, okay, bag and a half, a lot. 2 ounces of black licorice, like that's not a lot.
Daily.
What's
daily.
2 ounces?
Who's eating licorice daily?
I don't know.
Nobody's eating licorice daily.
Kids probably eat licorice daily, but it's probably not black licorice because black licorice is disgusting as a kid.
Well, now you know. If you have an annoying kid in your neighborhood, just feed him some black licorice daily.
Hey, come over for I got a few Twizzler sticks for you, kid.
But here's the thing. So it says it lowers it's got the glyco whatever acid, and it lowers your. Sure, yeah, exactly. That one that I know very well. It lowers the potassium levels, and that's what gives the heart a problem here. Yeah. So what I learned out of this, what my takeaway is you eat the licorice and then you have a banana chaser and you're good to go.
I think they know something about this because one of the things I was looking on the label to see if there was any indication of any kind of warning. Like it doesn't even say glycyrrhizic acid as part of the ingredients. It just happens to be part of the licorice extract.
Yeah.
And so you can look at the ingredients label and it doesn't say anything about that acid thing, but they add potassium into the licorice sticks.
Oh, so are they cheapskating on their potassium additive? Do they just need to add more potassium to counteract the effects of glycyrrhizic acid or whatever it's called?
So maybe that's to do better. Maybe they just need to do, instead of 1% of your daily value of potassium, it should be like 5 and it'll all even out. It's like taking uppers with your downers.
Exactly. And it's a fine balance and you gotta mix correctly. Maybe you just need to make sure to eat your Flintstone chewables, your vitamins every day.
Don't stop eating black licorice, Adam. I'm concerned about your heart. Now you know.
Nah, you can't make this black licorice loving rebel put the black licorice down, man. No. Once you go black licorice, you never go back.
What would you go back to?
Disappointment.
On to Better at Life.
All right, man. My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week is for Prairie View A&M University from Prairie View, Texas. We went to the Shrine Bowl, Brandon. We watched a lot of practice. We talked to a lot of people. It was fun. Enjoyed meeting people. Practice was football practice, so that's a thing. And then there was a all-star game, a little akin to the Pro Bowl. Worth going. But, not a lot of football revelations that came out of that or anything. But then, Brandon, in the one corner of the stadium, Prairie View A&M brought in their massive marching band with dancing girls and flag people. And my God, they were fantastic. It was so much fun. They had all sorts of different moves with the instruments, I did marching band. I'm a band nerd. There's a lot that goes into it. They had all sorts of different moves and chants. They were getting the crowd into it. They were a ton of fun. They brought the fun to Jerry World there and really brought a sound that was far superior to the music that gets pumped in at NFL stadiums. And it made me realize, Brandon, we need to bring the college style marching band to the league, get rid of the canned music drops that they use, bring the band back. It's a lot better. And Prairie View A&M, it was impressive. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Better at Life than Skip Bayless.
So what you're saying, the Blue Thunder drum line is not enough. They need horns.
Yes.
They need horns.
This is what I'm saying. It's like you took, just a piece out of the marching band and said, be as entertaining as a complete band. And they do a great job. Blue Thunder takes the drum as far as you can. But at the end of the day, anybody can hit something with a stick. I want to see some musicians.
You need tubas, you need trombones, you need trumpets, any other T ones that I'm forgetting.
Okay. You need mellophones, you need trombones, you need baritones, and some sousaphones and saxophones. You need those are the woodwinds that you need.
Okay. No clarinets, no flutes.
Look, you only end up playing clarinet if they don't let you play saxophone. Or you're the nerdy girl from every 90s rom-com, the ugly duckling that becomes the beautiful girl. That's your clarinet players.
As a saxophone player, were you ever concerned that you might have to downgrade to clarinet?
God, no. I was first chair all the time because I was catfish awesome. And then I got bored with it because I was so good at it that I switched to French horn, which I became pretty darn good at too, which means at that point you get to play the mellophone for marching band, which is really fun because it's like a massive trumpet. And it's pretty cool.
Do you consider yourself superior to a trumpet player because they just have the 3 buttons?
Not only am I superior to a trumpet player in terms of just musicianship, but also just in personality. I don't know if you knew this, Brandon, but the biggest douches in the band are generally the trumpet players. And to give you an idea of the braggadocious type that you're dealing with, the overly self-cocky type that you don't like to deal with in your regular world, Bronco Jared, trumpet player, not shocking at all. He fits the mold exactly.
I had no idea there was a band hierarchy of the douchebags of band.
Yeah. The clarinet player is always the shyest. Flute players are generally the pretty girls that were forced into doing band. Saxophone kids,
look, the flute players
linemen.
I want to say one thing about the flute players. They have it the easiest in terms of carrying their instrument. Easiest instrument to carry around. People that have the tuba or a cello or a bass, those people get screwed for having to carry around an instrument that's almost bigger than they are.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Yeah. Saxophone players are the laid back ones. French horn players are kind of more the intellectuals of the group. There's a lot that goes into that. Trombone players are just kind of nerds, and then like baritone tuba players, those sort of guys, deep brass and all that. They're the kids in high school where you're like, you probably should shower a little bit more, and try not to ask anybody to dance. It might not be good for your deal.
Now I want to ask people who are getting into the flock, if they were a band player, what instrument that they played, so that way we know like what kind of personality type they.
Yeah, it almost without fail fits. It's true. Yeah.
My Better at Life this week, Adam, is for our members of the flock. We've talked about it throughout the show. They were the reason that we had the opportunity to go down to Dallas to the Shrine Bowl. Shoot, we even got down to Austin and San Antonio. We went to our first NBA game where we saw the Spurs play the Clippers. And for that opportunity, getting to see, a couple of young, exciting players like Victor Wembanyama play for the Spurs, and then, see a couple NBA legends like Chris Paul and James Harden playing for throughout the game. It was just a great time. Couldn't have done it without you. And so to our members of the flock, you are better at life than Skip Bayless.
Oh, big time. We're going to need a few more donations, though, because I need to go to an audiologist. I don't think I have hearing in my right ear anymore after being surrounded by two like horse whistle guys, the people that can put their fingers in their mouth and like whistle at a level that should be reserved for like equipment, not like human beings. Like you shouldn't be able to do that on your own. And
I had to put in hearing protection partway through the game because I did not. Adam had to go, finger to the ear hole way more often. And I said, no, I'm just throwing in a pair of AirPods because I'm not dealing with this nonsense.
Look, I'm not telling anybody how to fan, but like at the end of the day, if you're going to do that whistle like a couple times throughout the game on like the high leverage plays and all that stuff, like out of like big time excitement, I get it. But
every free throw? Not necessarily.
Not necessary, man. Like understand, like read the room a little bit. If anybody around you is grasping at their head because of your actions, you're probably doing something wrong.
You're a little too loud, and you should know it with your loud whistling.
Yeah,
because that's why you're doing it. You're loud.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the entire point, I think, because it doesn't sound good.
Yeah. So like Adam's saying, it's not covered, I think, under Montana's insurance. So it's going to be a self-referral to the audiologist for Adam.
Oh yeah. No, I'm on the don't get catfish sick plan, man. Don't get it twisted.
I know. But and we did avoid that part, despite all of the handshaking that we did. Handshaking, fist bump, bro hug. It was it was the wide variety of greetings down in
it was. And I mean, just for the record, you're definitely more concerned about the germs than I am. That no doubt about it. I didn't have any worries about getting sick from the handshakings or any of that stuff. I was more worried with the idea that my bro handshakes and all that stuff were wildly out of date, and I was certainly a middle-aged white guy.
Yeah, I haven't done a bro handshake in a while, so that threw me off when people are throwing that at you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then not only that, but like everybody expects you to know which style of handshake they prefer out the gate, and so like you got to kind of guess and match up.
Yeah. And then the fist bump is easy because if they're coming in with the fist, then you know that it's probably going to be a fist bump.
Right, but here's the thing: is oftentimes like when they come in straight with the fist bump, because it's a momentary reaction. Like the hand just coming straight forward makes me go to traditional handshake like a man, and then I get confused, and then you've got like rock paper scissors going on, and I just want to grab their fist and be like, covered rock, I won. It gets awfully confusing.
That's how you dominate a handshake. Is if they go in fist bump, you just grab it, you win.
Yeah, be like, I got paper, you lose, buddy. Best out of 3.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.